Psychology is a well-established scientific study of mind and behavior, but this has not always been the case. How does psychology starts? The start of psychology as an experimental science began with William Wundt. Compared to other psychologists, most people do not know about this individual, but Wundt is in fact considered the father of experimental psychology due to how he distinguished psychology from biology and philosophy. And he actually ranked as well being the first most important psychologist of all time. Why Wundt? Other people such as Hermann von Helmholtz, Gustav Fechner, and Ernst Weber were involved in early scientific psychology research, so why are they not credited as the father of psychology? In this video, we're gonna find out why.
Prior to the mid-1800s, no one had ever studied psychology in a scientific manner. Although philosophers tried to understand the processes of the human brain or why it makes us behave the way we do. This all changed when William Wundt came along. Wundt earned his degree in the medical field in 1856. William Wundt, after starting off with a medicine degree, decided he wants to do more than be a doctor, and soon managed to become a professor of philosophy at Heidelberg in 1875. While working at the Heidelberg, he delivered the first university course in scientific psychology and went on to write the first textbook in psychology, Principle of Physiological Psychology, with focuses on the brain and our senses. In the same university, other two great psychologists are currently working, Gustav Fechner and Ernst Weber. Weber had a great influence on him due to his research on sensory psychology, but Wundt insisted that Weber should be the father of psychology rather than himself.
Wundt also performed some memory experiments similar to those of Hermann Ebbinghaus, but for some reason, Wundt's memory experiments have ironically been almost forgotten by history. Wundt is still considered as the father of psychology for us and bestowed this distinction because of his formation of the world's first experimental psychology lab, which is usually noted as the official start of psychology as a separate and distinct science.
This is the main event for psychology. Wundt's approach became known as structuralism because he used experimental methods to find the basic building blocks, structures of thought and investigate how they interacted. To do this, he studied sensation and perceptions, breaking participants' observations of objects, images, and events down in constituent parts in the same way that an anatomist would study a body, trying to find its constituent parts and how they interact. Woods, in his laboratory, a room specifically designed for scientific experimentation, Woods emphasized sensation and perception as two of his most important concepts. The former involves a responses that is psychological to an external stimulus, while the latter entails an interpretation of a particular sensation that is psychological.
Much skepticism of Wundt's method was often due to his use of introspection, or as he coined it, internal perception, which is derived from Greek and means to look inward. As critics including P. F. Skinner points out, his is mostly a subjective process. Structuralism and Wilhelm Wundt originally developed the theory of voluntarism, which involves the organization of the mind and presupposes free will by a person. With structuralism, Wundt utilized introspection to analyze the basic elements of the mind.
Wundt believed firmly that psychological experience of human beings were indeed tied to psychological experience of human beings, and therefore could be studied more objectively. In fact, in the same way, Mendeleev created a periodic table of elements for the field of chemistry. Wundt decided to create a periodic table of sensation for the field of psychology. However, this proved to be much more difficult than Wundt and his pupil Titchener had ever imagined. Edward B. Titchener was a well-known pupil and a staunch advocate of Wilhelm Wundt, who further espoused structuralism, or a theory that breaks down the mind into its component parts, in his teaching.
Wundt retired in 1917, and due to his last breath in 1920, Wundt's works are often mislooked and overshadowed by the life of Sigmund Freud. But he played one of the most important roles in developing psychology because he offered it validity and reliability. He offers to standardize the way of testing and falsifying hypotheses, thus giving it a place among the other sciences.